Well, now there's a new study finding that more than 75% of homes across the U.S. are unaffordable as the gap between wages and home prices widens.
If you want to create jobs, start with housing. If you want to attract new businesses, start with housing.
Active listings just hit their highest level since 2020, climbing again in November and surging from a year earlier. On paper, it sounds like the long-awaited supply boom buyers have been begging for. But the reality is messier. Beneath the glossy headline is a market that's clogged and quietly unraveling. More homes for sale doesn't mean more homes people actually want. The real story isn't abundance, it's staleness, denial, and a widening gap between what sellers expect and what buyers will pay. Pull that thread, and the market starts to look less like a shortage and more like a yard sale no one's browsing. Listings are up more than 12% year over year, the biggest November inventory since before the pandemic warped the market. Yet homes aren't flying off the shelf. They're sitting. More than half of listings in November lingered for at least 60 days, the highest share for any November since 2019. That alone should make sellers nervous. When over 50% of homes can't get a bite in 2 full months, it's not a hot market, it's a stalemate. Buyers are taking longer too, with the typical home that does go under contract.
I think it's not a realistic benchmark. I think that the problem in the housing market's a structural problem that's been going on for decades and decades and decades.
Now taking 43 days, another slowest since 2019 milestone. And the anecdotes coming out of the field make it painfully clear why. A huge chunk of what's for sale is either stale, overpriced, or straight up undesirable. It technically counts as supply, but it doesn't actually relieve demand pressure because no one wants it at the asking price. Ask agents like Meme Loggins in Portland, who's having the same uncomfortable conversation with sellers on repeat. If a home isn't priced fairly, it's going to sit, period. The market has split cleanly in two. Well-priced move-in ready homes vanish in 3 to 5 days. Overpriced listings linger for months. It's brutal. It's simple.
The housing costs are completely out of line with wages.
And many sellers still refuse to accept it. Portland's numbers back that up. Nearly 60% of listings there lingered past 60 days in November, placing the metro among the worst performers nationwide. But Portland isn't an outlier. It's part of a pattern. Pan out nationally, and the map lights up in all the places that were once pandemic darlings. Miami tops the list with nearly 64% of listings sitting stale. Austin follows. Then Fort Lauderdale, San Antonio, Orlando. A Sunbelt greatest hits album, now playing in reverse. These are markets where inventory ballooned fast, buyer demand cooled faster, and sellers are now staring down a reality they didn't expect. The reasons stack up quickly. Florida and Texas have been building more homes than almost anywhere else in the country.
Multifamily real estate developer, largely of affordable housing and mixed income housing on large scale projects.
Flooding markets with new supply, just as affordability started to snap. In Florida, it's not just prices that are spooking buyers. It's surging insurance premiums, soaring HOA fees, and an intensifying drumbeat of natural disasters that makes even sunshine loyalists hesitate. Florida now accounts for 3 of the 5 metros with the biggest year-over-year increases in active listings, and it's also leading the nation in stale inventory growth. In Tampa, nearly 57% of listings sat unsold for at least 60 days last month, up more than 12 percentage points from a year earlier, the largest jump among major metros. Fort Lauderdale and Orlando aren't far behind. Neither are San Diego and West Palm Beach. Meanwhile, the contrast elsewhere is stark. In Providence, fewer than 40% of listings lingered that long, the lowest share among the top 50 metros. Milwaukee, Montgomery County in Pennsylvania, Warren, Michigan, and San Jose round out the tightest markets.
What we have in housing in the United States is a chronic shortage since the financial crisis.
Geography now matters more than ever. And then comes the stat that reframes everything. In December, there were an estimated 47% more home sellers than buyers nationwide. That's over 600,000 more sellers chasing too few buyers, the largest imbalance on record dating back to 2013. It's not just big, it's accelerating. The gap widened more than 7 percentage points in just 1 month. It's up more than 22 points from a year earlier. By Redfin's definition, anything over 10% qualifies as a buyer's market. By that standard, the U.S. has been solidly buyer-favored since May 2024. Of course, that power only exists if you can afford to use it. High prices, high mortgage rates, layoffs, and economic uncertainty are keeping many would-be buyers on the sidelines. But for those who can play, the leverage is real.
In the final quarter of 2022, the typical U.S. home sold for a record-shattering $468,000.
When sellers outnumber buyers this dramatically, buyers negotiate harder, demand concessions, and walk away faster. That's exactly what's happening in places like Dallas. Local agents there are now openly talking about sellers being underwater. Homes bought at the pandemic peak are coming back to market at a loss. One seller is swallowing a 10% hit just to get out. Some sellers accept it, many don't. Denial is expensive. Dallas now has nearly 87% more sellers than buyers, one of the most lopsided markets in the country. Years of aggressive construction helped get it there, and the price data is unforgiving. The median home price in Dallas fell more than 7% year over year in December, the steepest decline among major metros. Nationally, prices barely budged, rising just 0.1%, the slowest growth since mid-2023. And it's not just sellers flooding the market. Buyers are disappearing. The number of active home buyers dropped nearly 6% in December to the lowest level ever recorded. Sellers are retreating too, but far more slowly.
Wage growth is growing faster than home prices, and that always helps with affordability. So I think that's definitely helping buyers in terms of thinking about the future.
Creating a traffic jam of listings with fewer and fewer shoppers passing through. Buyers are backing off for familiar reasons. Stubbornly high prices, mortgage rates that refuse to cooperate, layoffs, political anxiety, economic uncertainty. Sellers are reacting by delisting, waiting, or choosing not to list at all after watching nearby homes sell below asking. In the most extreme cases, the imbalance is jaw-dropping. In Austin, sellers outnumber buyers by 128%. Fort Lauderdale follows at 125%. Nashville, Miami, San Antonio aren't far behind. These were once the hottest markets in the country. Now, they're cautionary tales. The Sun Belt skyrocketed in popularity during the pandemic. Builders raced to meet demand. Inventory exploded.
The question really is, how do we fill that gap? Is the answer incentivizing new housing development, new housing investment, new market participation?
And now the buyer pool has shrunk, squeezed by affordability and exhaustion, leaving too many homes chasing too few offers. Construction policy quietly shaped this outcome. The South and West issued far more building permits than the Northeast and Midwest. Today, those regions are swimming in buyers' markets. The places that built less now enjoy tighter supply and stronger seller leverage. The price trends confirm it. Home prices rose nearly 5% year over year in sellers' markets in December. Balanced markets saw modest gains. Buyers' markets barely moved at all. Then the story takes a turn. In Maryland, Governor Wes Moore is stepping into the 2026 legislative session with a trio of housing bills aimed at fixing supply in a very different way.
These are going to be the 5 ingredients of our success. Make better use of state land. Cut red tape. Strengthen partnerships. Set clear goals. And reward jurisdictions that lean in on housing.
Not by fueling speculative booms, but by unlocking underused land, cutting red tape, and rethinking what kinds of homes get built. Standing outside a metro station in Prince George's County, Moore points to more than 300 acres of state-owned land near transit stations sitting idle, dormant, unused, doing nothing for housing or the economy. His proposal would eliminate parking minimums near transit, promote mixed-use development, and give the state more authority to build housing where infrastructure already exists. The potential upside? Thousands of new units without pushing sprawl even further.
Places to buy groceries, places to grab a coffee, places to gather with your neighbors, places to be a neighborhood.
Layered onto that is the Housing Certainty Act, which would defer fees for builders until after construction, a wonky but powerful change meant to keep capital flowing and projects moving faster. Then, there's the Starter and Silver Homes Act, which challenges the idea that everyone needs a large house on a large lot. Smaller homes, smaller lots. More flexibility for first-time buyers and seniors who've been priced out. Together, the bills outline a different philosophy of supply.
Right now, local mandates often require lot sizes so large that the only thing that you can build is a huge home.
One focused on location, affordability, and choice, not just raw volume. The vision is already taking shape at Capitol Heights, where surface parking will be transformed into hundreds of affordable apartments and neighborhood retail, backed by state investment and tied to a broader plan for economic growth along the Blue Line corridor. There's no set timeline yet, no guarantee of success, but in a housing market increasingly defined by excess supply in the wrong places and scarcity in the right ones, the contrast is striking. Because right now, the biggest problem in American housing isn't that there aren't enough listings, it's that too many of them are waiting, hoping, and slowly realizing the market they remember is already gone.